Pugnavi-I. It felt like the world was going to end. The darkness pressed down on her like a heavy iron plate. She stood up, but with difficulty. How was she going to make it? It seemed impossible. Everything around her was falling apart. She felt a sharp sting in her stomach and realized she was bleeding. She pressed a hand to her stomach and didn't look down. She wobbled forward as the lights flickered around her. The sun shone through a large hole in the roof. She had to climb over rubble from the walls. Large concrete slabs, stained with dark crimson blood. She walked past body after body, but she tried not to look down. She tried to only look ahead. She groped around her neck for the silver necklace. She clutched onto it. In her mind, she could see him walking beside her. On his back, he carried the weight of the world. It was her only hope, the idea that he was there with her. Lucia kept on walking towards a hole in the wall. With silent tears pouring down her face, she climbed out of the hole. She was tired, and her muscles ached. Her body was bruised and broken. Her fingers hurt from being crushed and stepped on. As she exited the building, she turned around on her heels slowly, closing her eyes so she didn't have to look beyond the walls that comforted her. When she had turned fully around her, she opened her eyes and gazed at the broken church. Holes at every side. The door blasted through and left hanging by one hinge. She looked up, and amazingly, the cross on the top was still there. Like the flag that never fell, couldn't be taken down. She smiled weakly, but her smile soon turned painful and became a grimace of mourning. She looked down and wiped away the tears. She stayed there for a few seconds, just being in the grief, allowing the waves of loss to drown her. Again, she held on to the cross around her neck. Gathering strength, she rose from the bottom of the ocean, broke the surface of the waves, and turned again on her heel, looking onward at the town before her. Sand billowed in the winds like scattered peoples. Wooden houses and stores stood before her. The street was empty and desolate, as far as she knew. There was a lot still standing. The statues in the center were intact, but of course they were. People don't tear down what they agree with. She could see, straight ahead of her, the thing she opposed. A tall building where people went to run away from their decisions. The places that were most trashed from the riots were bookstores. People didn't want to know more. They wanted to pretend they knew everything. Spray paint lined the walls. On it were things like, Christians should all die, kill the police, and boredom. Lucia shook her head and moved forward. She saw him walking beside her. She carried on very slowly past all the destruction. She had to show them she was still alive. She had to get to the root of this. She had to. As she was walking, she heard a sound, the sound of yelling. A man walked out in front of her and started laughing at her. His face was ruddy and sweaty. He was smoking. There were people behind her now. Some of them were yelling and some were just watching silently. She stepped around the man and kept walking. The crowd was following her as she walked towards that which she opposed. They had torches in their hands and rocks. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw someone hurl a stone at her. It hit her, and she stumbled and fell over. Her palms scraped against the cement and broke open. The rock left a bruise on her side, but she got up shakily and kept walking. The thought of staying on the ground was as faint as a mouse, crawling over twigs at night. She was the perfect painting of a battle. Her church dress in tatters and rips, her broken heels, her hair falling out of the bun, her mascara bleeding. She kept walking, as she was. She kept walking as they had left her. The crowd around her was building. She heard a gun cock behind her. But she pressed on. Someone grabbed Lucia's hand and yanked her back hard. She fell to the ground, and the crowd surrounded her, kicking her in the face and in the stomach. She gasped for air as they kicked it out of her. She closed her eyes and became still. "Help us," she prayed out loud. And then a glorious sound as the lights began to fade, as the darkness descended upon the earth. She saw him reach his hand down and pull her up. The crowd ceased their endless kicking and stepped back. She wiped off the dirt from her dress and stood up. She continued walking. And now the rain had come. It was cold. The crowd stood further behind her and watched her limp forward. Except now, they were silent. She stumbled over her dress and twisted her ankle. It hurt so bad she started to see dots popping up in the corners of her vision, and now she didn't think she could stand. So she crawled, dragging her bum ankle behind her and ignoring the screams of her body to please stop, stop, stop. Slowly but surely, she made it to the big gray building. She grabbed onto the doorknob and hoisted herself up. She opened the doors. Nothing but death would make her stop.